Welcome to our deep dive into Tim Ferriss's Tools of Titans.
Mm.
You gave us quite a collection of excerpts here.
Oh, it's an incredible book, isn't it? So many remarkable people.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
across so many fields. So we're going to try to break it all down,
Yeah.
right? Their habits, routines, philosophies, and, maybe find a few of those aha moments along the way for ourselves.
Absolutely. We're covering it all, health, wealth, productivity, and even some a bit of that unconventional wisdom. Should be fun.
I'm excited. Let's start with health and performance.
Mhm.
One person that really jumped out at me was Amelia Boone.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Tim calls her the Michael Jordan of obstacle course racing.
Yeah.
And for good reason, right? She pushes herself to the absolute limit, even winning races after knee surgery.
I mean, that's incredible. It really speaks to the power of, mental toughness and pain tolerance that a lot of these high achievers have.
Yeah, pushing those boundaries. Speaking of pushing boundaries, Tim himself experimented with fasting to try and combat Lyme disease. He even did a 7-day fast.
Wow.
Yeah. Researched all these top fasting clinics, learned about all the different protocols and benefits.
You're talking about like the 5.2 method and the alternate day fasting.
Exactly.
It's interesting, but it's you really got to do your research right before making those kinds of changes.
Oh, for sure. Talk to a doctor. It could be tough. And it's interesting how the book mentions Patrick Arnold, a chemist,
Okay.
and his product Keto Force.
Yeah.
It's a ketone supplement
Yeah.
designed to kind of mimic the metabolic effects of fasting,
Hmm.
almost like a shortcut,
Interesting.
but, probably has its own challenges.
Right. And there's also metformin. It's typically used for type 2 diabetes, but some research shows it may have anti-aging properties.
Oh, wow.
The science is complicated, but it essentially mimics some of the cellular changes of calorie restriction, so it could potentially slow down aging.
Wow, that's fascinating.
But again, really important to consult a doctor before even thinking about experimenting with that.
Absolutely. It's amazing how these high achievers are always like pushing the envelope, exploring all these new ideas, not just sticking to conventional methods.
Yeah, they're not afraid to experiment. Like you have Wim Hof, the Iceman, advocating for cold exposure techniques. Laird Hamilton using deep dive training. Tony Robbins in his morning routine for priming his body and mind.
Yeah, it's like they're hacking their own biology.
Right. And, there's actual science behind it. Cold exposure, for example, can boost your immune system, help with fat loss, and even improve your mood.
Yeah, the key takeaway here is that priming your body and mind, even in unconventional ways, can be incredibly beneficial. Whether it's a cold plunge or a specific breathing exercise, finding what works for you, know?
Definitely.
And, talking about pushing boundaries, Amelia Boone's story about the death race,
Oh, yeah.
she told Tim about getting frostbite while helping to pull a 1-ton metal beam out of a river
Oh, my gosh.
in January. Talk about commitment, right? It makes you wonder what drives people to those kinds of extremes.
It's incredible, right? The sheer mental fortitude to endure those kinds of challenges is a whole other level.
Yeah, maybe it's that thrill of testing their limits. Or maybe it's proving something to themselves. Whatever it is, it's fascinating. But let's shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Dive into the world of wealth and business.
Yeah.
One of the titans in the book is Chris Sacca, the venture capitalist. Made a fortune investing in Twitter and Uber.
Oh, yeah. Right place, right time.
It wasn't just luck, though. I mean, Sacca was really skilled at identifying emerging trends, patterns. He sought out startups that were solving real problems, and had the potential to disrupt industries.
That's crucial, right? Recognizing those opportunities, seeing the potential where others don't.
Yeah, like having that sixth sense for success.
In a way, yeah. And speaking of decision-making, Mark Andreessen, the co-founder of Netscape, he advocates for building contrarian teams. Basically, you surround yourself with people who challenge your ideas.
Interesting. So, they're not afraid to disagree with you?
Exactly.
That could get heated sometimes, but I guess it would ultimately lead to better decisions.
Definitely forces you to think critically, right?
Yeah.
Consider those different perspectives. In your work or even personal life, do you ever feel like you're only hearing voices that agree with you?
That's a good question. Probably more than I realize. Maybe I should be intentionally seeking out those diverse opinions more.
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah,
Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have Derek Sivers, founder of CD Baby. He built a successful company with a remarkably simple approach.
I love hearing about those unconventional business models.
So his inspiration actually came from a local record store. They had a simple system, taking a commission for selling CDs on consignment. So he applied that same principle, but to the online world.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, created CD Baby, a platform for musicians to sell their music directly to fans.
It's brilliant. He took something from the offline world and adapted it to the digital age.
It's a great example of how, simplicity and focus can be so powerful. Sometimes the most effective solutions are the simplest.
Yeah, makes you wonder if we often overcomplicate things, doesn't it?
For sure, something to consider.
Yeah. Now, Casey Neistat, the filmmaker, YouTuber, his story's all about hustle and relentless dedication.
Oh, yeah, he's a machine.
I mean, he built a massive following by creating daily content, engaging with his audience in such an authentic way.
He really put in the work, didn't he?
Yeah, shows that there are many paths to success, It's about finding what works for you and your personality.
For sure, for sure. And, it also shows how hard work and consistency can really pay off, especially online.
Totally. And speaking of different paths, the book also features Reid Hoffman,
Okay.
co-founder of LinkedIn. He took a much slower, more deliberate approach, like a slow burn versus, Casey Neistat's rapid fire style.
That's a great way to put it. It highlights that, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. Reid Hoffman focused on building that valuable network and a platform that really provided value to users. It took time, but it paid off.
So what are the key takeaways from all these different approaches to wealth and business?
I think it boils down to recognizing patterns, opportunities, building that diverse team that challenges you, and focusing on providing real value.
Great advice.
Whether you go fast or slow, those principles can guide you towards success.
Okay. Now let's switch gears again
Right.
and focus on something I think is so important. Productivity and mindsets. I mean, all this knowledge is great, but we got to actually apply it, right?
Exactly. Let's talk about that toolkit for the mind. This is where things get really practical.
Okay.
Tim Ferriss calls one of the tools selective ignorance. Sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's really brilliant.
Wait, so what exactly is selective ignorance?
It's all about being mindful of the information you consume. Consciously limiting your exposure to news and social media to avoid that feeling of overwhelm.
Oh, so like creating a filter
Yeah.
to block out the noise and focus on what truly matters.
Yeah, exactly. It's a common theme among these high achievers. Tim Ferriss, for example, he avoids email first thing in the morning. Seth Godin, the marketing guru, skips reading newspapers altogether.
Makes sense. Protecting your mental space and directing your energy where it needs to go.
Exactly. And speaking of being intentional, one of the most powerful quotes in the book is from Naval Ravikant.
Okay.
He says, "The most important trick to being happy is realizing that happiness is a choice you make and a skill you develop."
Wow, that's powerful. Happiness isn't something that just happens. It's something you actively cultivate.
You got it. It's not a destination, it's a practice.
I love that. So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts. It's about actually training your mind to be happier.
Right? Developing those mental habits like meditation, gratitude journaling, cognitive reframing. You're actively choosing happiness.
That's great. And, speaking of pushing boundaries, Rolf Potts, author of Vagabonding, encourages long-term travel as a way to break free from routines and discover yourself. It's not just a vacation. It's a lifestyle shift.
Yeah.
That sounds so liberating.
It is.
To just pack up and explore the world.
Yeah.
But it also takes a lot of courage to step away from the familiar, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that ties back into that theme of, challenging norms and pushing those boundaries. Rolf Potts' idea of vagabonding, it forces you to confront those comfort zones and embrace the unknown.
It's like a crash course in self-discovery, right?
Yeah.
Pushing you to adapt and overcome challenges in a completely new environment.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's move into the realm of life hacks and unconventional wisdom.
All right, this is where it gets interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears. What secrets are we about to unlock?
Let's dive in.
Okay, we're back. Ready to jump back into Tools of Titans. We've covered a lot of ground already. Pushing boundaries, business approaches.
We've only just scratched the surface, though.
I know, right? So much to unpack still.
No.
Now, I think it'd be interesting to dive into some of those more personal insights, those philosophies from these titans.
Yeah, get a peek behind the curtain,
Exactly. And I'm particularly fascinated by their mindset. There seems to be a common thread, this belief in the power of the mind.
Oh, absolutely. And Naval Ravikant, we talked about him briefly, he has a very interesting perspective on happiness. He doesn't see it as this distant destination, but as a skill, something you develop, a choice you make every day.
I used to think, oh, I'll be happy when I achieve X, Y, and Z. But his view is so much more empowering. You're not just waiting around.
You're taking control.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about ignoring challenges or pretending everything's perfect, but it's choosing to approach life with a positive mindset.
Being proactive.
Yeah. And speaking of things that support a healthy mind, meditation comes up a lot in Tools of Titans. That's like their secret weapon. I've tried meditation, on and off, but I never quite stick with it. What is it about meditation that's so beneficial for these titans, these high achievers?
Well, it helps you manage stress, improve focus, cultivate that sense of calm, and the research is really solid now.
Yeah.
It's not just for, monks or spiritual gurus anymore. It can reduce anxiety, depression, improve your sleep, even boost creativity.
Wow. So it's like a mental workout, building resilience, clarity.
Exactly. It helps you stay grounded amidst, all the chaos.
Right. And speaking of workouts, Tony Robbins starts his day with this whole priming routine, cold plunges, breathing exercises.
Yeah.
We talked about cold exposure, but what's this priming all about?
It's intentionally shifting your state of mind,
Yeah.
energizing yourself for the day, taking control of your physiology to influence your psychology.
So like hacking your nervous system to set yourself up for success.
Exactly. You're not just passively waking up, letting the day control you. You're in charge.
I like that. And this connects to selective ignorance too, right?
Yeah.
Which we touched on earlier.
Yes. Being mindful of the information you consume, limiting news, social media, all of that.
Yeah, it's so relevant now with all the information overload.
It's not about being uninformed. It's about protecting that mental space.
Being intentional with your attention.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears a bit. Talk about something that holds a lot of people back. Fear.
Oh, yeah.
We all experience it, but these titans, they've found ways to not let it control them.
It can be so paralyzing, though. What are some of their approaches?
Well, one is simply acknowledging it, naming the fear, understanding where it's coming from, then taking action. Tim Ferriss talks about fear setting. You identify your worst-case scenarios.
Oh, right.
Then make plans to deal with them.
So instead of this big, scary unknown, you break it down into smaller pieces.
You got it. You take away its power.
I see. And once you've identified those fears, you can start to challenge them.
Exactly. That's where stepping outside your comfort zone comes in. Rolf Potts, the vagabonding author, he talks about the power of long-term travel.
Oh, yeah. We mentioned him earlier.
It forces you to break free from those routines, immerse yourself in new experiences.
I've always wanted to travel the world.
Yeah.
But there's that fear, fear of the unknown, fear of failure.
But what if you saw those fears as opportunities? The unknown as something to embrace, not fear.
That's a good way to look at it, turning challenges into adventures.
And speaking of embracing discomfort, Brené Brown, the researcher who studies vulnerability and courage, she emphasizes the importance of those difficult conversations.
Oh, I love Brené Brown. She's so insightful.
She has this great quote: "The real measure of a person's success in life is how many uncomfortable conversations they're willing to have."
I've always avoided confrontation, hate awkwardness, conflict. But maybe I'm missing out on growth, on deepening relationship.
It's worth considering. Those tough conversations, as challenging as they are, they can lead to greater understanding, deeper connections.
Being authentic, even when it's hard.
And that brings us to another important piece, right? Relationships.
Yeah, for sure.
Tools of Titans has so much about building strong connections, trust, creating a supportive network. Despite all their accomplishments, these Titans, they all value relationships.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that when you're caught up in the hustle, striving for success. But it's the connections that really matter.
At the end of the day, yeah.
And these titans, they talk about surrounding yourself with people who inspire you, challenge you, support you.
Mentorship, collaboration, community, it's all in there.
Chris Sacca, the venture capitalist, talks about building a brain trust, like having your own personal board of advisors.
And it's not just about receiving mentorship, it's about giving back, too. A lot of these titans are philanthropists, mentors, using their success to help others.
That's great. It's not just about personal gain, it's about contributing to something bigger.
Making a difference.
And it doesn't have to be these grand gestures, right? It can be a kind word, a helping hand, just being there for someone.
Those small acts matter.
It's about building those genuine connections, big and small. They make life richer.
And sometimes, those strong relationships require those tough conversations we talked about.
Right, right.
Amanda Palmer, the musician, she really emphasizes vulnerability and authenticity in connecting with others.
Oh, I love her. She embraces those imperfections, encourages others to do the same.
Being real, being human, connecting on a deeper level.
Creating a space where people feel safe to be themselves.
Exactly. And speaking of feeling safe, let's talk about self-care. Tools of Titans emphasizes prioritizing well-being, creating a sustainable lifestyle.
It's so easy to neglect self-care when you're chasing goals. But these Titans, they get it. Rest, recovery, it's important.
They know you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So they prioritize sleep, exercise, healthy eating.
But it goes beyond that.
Oh, so what else do they recommend?
They talk about finding activities that bring you joy. Time in nature, hobbies, just taking time for yourself.
Nurturing your creativity, recharging.
Finding that balance, work and play, striving and savoring.
Creating a life that's both fulfilling and sustainable.
Exactly. Supporting your well-being on all levels.
Okay, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what are some key takeaways for our listener?
I think the big lesson is that success isn't just about, external achievements. It's about cultivating a healthy mindset, building strong relationships, taking care of yourself.
It's the foundation for everything.
Exactly. It's focusing on the process, not just the outcome, embracing those challenges as opportunities. And remember, you're not alone.
Great point.
Surround yourself with good people, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Great advice. Okay, ready to move on to our final section.
Let's do it.
We'll explore some of those more unconventional wisdom bits, those life hacks the Titans share. Curious to see what other surprises we find.
Me too. Let's dive in.
Okay, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Tools of Titans, and this is where we get to those little nuggets, right? Those unconventional bits of wisdom, those life hacks, the things that can really make a difference.
It's so interesting how these high achievers approach things, problem solving, creativity. They just have these unique perspectives.
Yeah, like Deadmar5, the music producer, he shared a really simple technique for overcoming creative blocks. Calls it the 10% rule.
I've heard of that.
It's about making small improvements. Instead of trying to be perfect right away, he forces himself to create something that's just like 10% better than before.
So it gets you going.
Yeah, breaks through that resistance, builds momentum.
I like that. And you could apply that to anything, really, not just music.
Totally. It's a mindset shift, progress over perfection. And Samin Nosrat, the chef, the author of Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat.
Oh, great book.
She has this really interesting perspective on cooking and even life in general.
Yeah, she breaks it down to those essential elements, right? Salt, fat, acid, heat.
Right, mastering the fundamentals.
And she applies that same idea to life, too. Figure out what brings you joy, satisfaction, those essential elements, and focus on those.
That's a great analogy. Simplifying things.
Yeah.
Prioritizing what matters.
And speaking of simplifying, Derek Sivers, the founder of CD Baby.
Oh, yeah, we talked about him.
Master of that. He has this principle, hell yeah or no.
Okay, what's that?
If you're not feeling a resounding hell yeah about something, it's a no.
So that applies to, like, opportunities.
Commitments.
Even relationships. It's about being intentional with your time and energy.
That makes sense. Saying no to the things that don't excite you.
It frees you up to say yes to the things that do.
I like that. Now, for anyone who struggles with procrastination, there's this great life hack. It's called the Jerry Seinfeld strategy.
Oh, yeah, tell me about that.
It's about building consistency. Seinfeld, the comedian, he said to be a better comic, you got to write jokes every day, even if they're not good.
So he used a calendar. Every day he wrote, he'd mark a big red X on it.
A visual reminder.
Yeah, it keeps you accountable. It's motivating. Turns a big task into these smaller steps.
And you can use that for anything, really. Exercise, learning a language.
Totally. Speaking of breaking down big goals, Josh Waitzkin, the chess prodigy, he has a technique called making smaller circles.
I like that. What's that about?
It's a strategy for tackling those complex tasks by focusing on the immediate next step.
Yeah.
So you don't get overwhelmed by the whole thing.
You start small, then expand.
Yeah, like how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
You got it. Steady progress.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on one final theme from Tools of Titans. Living a life of purpose.
Yeah, it's not just about achieving success, right?
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions with your values, making a positive impact.
A lot of these titans are involved in Philanthropy, mentorship, social causes.
They understand that true fulfillment comes from contributing to something bigger,
It's about finding your gifts and using them to make a
no
difference.
matter how big or small.
And remembering that success isn't a destination, it's a journey. You embrace the challenges, learn from the setbacks, celebrate the wins.
Well said. It's been incredible exploring these insights, these
Yeah, I
strategies.
hope our listeners got some good takeaways.
We've only just scratched the surface. Everyone should check out Tools of Titans for themselves.
There's so much wisdom in there.
And remember, success isn't about following some formula. It's about finding what works for you, experimenting, and embracing that journey.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing your own boundaries.